doing all the work in promoting the event. So we're really grateful for these two organizations and North Seattle College for hosting Cookie Haponia. But before I introduce Cookie Haponia, we have a very, very special welcome by the president of the college, Dr. Rachel Salmsas.
Thank you and good morning. First and foremost, also to thank Diana. Diana is, one of our definitely stars here. Three Frog Pride, an author also as well, and an inspirational AAPI woman. And so to bring another inspirational speaker to North, what a privilege that is. So thank you, Diana, for doing that. Welcome everyone. It's just really a pleasure to be here and to welcome you to this event where we are introducing what I will call a Hela Pinay. Hela Pinay, that's what we call it. Pinay, which stands for Filipino woman. Cookie Haponia, who is the author of We Belong, and so we get to hear her story. And what's so wonderful and inspirational about her story is really how we build community, right? At North, we're very committed to equity, inclusion, and diversity, and community. And authors like Cookie really provide us, with that storytelling and how storytelling can really create that community. And in fact, I was so inspired by her story. I am Filipina as well, and my daughter who owns a coffee shop in Denver, and what was fascinating on her own evolution is it's called Coffee Sarap, which is a Filipino-based coffee. So if you love ube pandan, that's what the bestseller. But they do a lot of culture, and so Cookie definitely reminds me of her. And this is one of the recent posts about always remembering where we started and why. Two women, so there's this, their coffee is actually started by two Filipino women wanting more for themselves, for their culture, or for the little girl. Oops, sorry. Perfect. Two women wanting more for themselves, for their culture, for the little girls they once were growing up in a town that welcomed them, but knowing that, sorry, I'm just going to have to facilitate welcome isn't everyone's story. We thought it would be fun to own a coffee shop. We didn't know it would become a calling. So I don't know how to do it because it's you have to do the Facebook. Yeah, read the more. There you go. Sure,
I'm terrible too. I don't know why.
yeah, sure. We didn't know it would become a calling. This is more than coffee. We're not here for a check. We're here for a movement. One that started as a quiet dream, two girls in a whitewashed town, imagining a seat at a table that looked like them. All Asian stories deserve to be told, all of them. We're here to hire, to inspire, to teach, listen, and uplift, to be something more for the people who need it, because that's what we were raised to do. Filipinos don't just open their doors, they pull you inside, feed you, sit with you, and make you feel like you matter. It's not hospitality, it's instinct. It's love made visible. We build this place to be that for our community. And so if you're a little girl or boy, or however you identify, in a town that doesn't see you yet, we see you, come get a coffee. So it's this kind of storytelling, including, Cookie here and the book We Belong is, and of course, an honor to hear from her directly, is what builds community. So thank you for joining us today and being here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate.
Sorry. There we go. Okay.
Sorry, did you want to say something?
Go ahead. Thank you.
So I'm going to, it's my pleasure pleasure to introduce Cookie Caponia. And I'm going, yay, I'm so excited. I'm going to read Cookie's bio, but then I want to tell a little story of how we met. So this is Cookie's bio. Cookie Caponia is a multicultural and multidisciplinary writer, editor, and poet. Her first book, We Belong, is a novel in verse that explores what it means to love and be loved, how to find acceptance and belonging in a world that is not created for you. She is currently working on several projects for both students and adults. She lives in the Seattle area with her 2 daughters and chosen family. So, I wanted to say that Catherine and I started teaching this coordinated studies class once upon a time again, fairy tale retellings, 4 years ago. And no, I think it was maybe 6 years ago. Sorry. This is the 3rd time we've taught it. And the very first time we taught it 3 times. The very first time we taught it with this book, We Belong. And the second time we taught it with this book, We Belong. And students love this book. They found it so engaging and enthralling. And so Catherine and I knew that this 3rd time that we were teaching it, that we would need to teach it again. So I think it was about a year ago. I was at an author event, and I heard someone introduce herself to someone else as, "Hi, I'm Cookie." And I thought, how many cookies must there be at an author event in Seattle? So I ran over and said, "Cookie Caponia?" And she kind of took a step back.
Yes, maybe.
Depending on the context. And I said, I just need to introduce myself because we have been teaching, my co-teacher and I have been teaching your book to our classes, and our students love your book. Your book is beautiful, it means so much. And I think I waited a full 5 minutes before inviting you to come and speak to us. Right. And I said, I don't know how we're going to find the funding, but we will find it. And I would love to invite you. So again, I want to thank North Seattle for providing this opportunity. And I was so grateful to be able to invite Cookie here to talk to all of you. So without further ado, Cookie Caponia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for the wonderful welcome. As Diana said, it took me aback actually when a fellow author was like kind of fangirling a little bit over. I was like, oh, what's happening? Is this my life right now? What's going on? And I just been, when I found out that it was going to be, oh, come to my class and do a talk. And then all of a sudden it was, oh, psych, just kidding. Actually, go to the library auditorium to do a big talk. I'm like, oh, okay, it's a big girl pants kind of day. Well then, let's do it. So, without further ado, this is my talk on your own personal mythos. Raise your hand if you get that reference. What about if I sing it? Your own personal mythos. All right, if you have the answer, hold it in your head, and then we'll have a quiz after, because this is, after all, a literary talk. Okay, so I designed this talk a little bit about how to make your art personal, but making it feel universal. Okay, so welcome to my lecture on how art is a conversation and not a lecture. So let's start with what have we been told as writers and artists, right? Artists also make what we know, but right now I'm focusing on the axioms that we've learned as writers. So the first thing is write what you know, and we'll talk about that in a second. Second is know your audience. And this is the part that I think people forget sometimes, is that you are also your audience, right? And so when you're writing something, if it doesn't make sense to you, or if it feels inauthentic to your voice, change that. Because you should know your audience and you should write to your audience, which is including, and maybe most importantly, yourself. Knowing all of this is only half the battle. Okay, raise your hand if you know that reference. Yeah, go G.I. Joe. That's from the G.I. Joe cartoon, where they did a little like after school lesson kind of thing, after episode lesson. And they would always say, and now you know, and knowing is half the battle. So I'm hoping that today, when we're done with this lecture, you'll know some stuff that maybe you didn't know before, but that's only half the battle. The action item for today is to seek your story in the silences. And I'm going to go ahead and explain that in the next few slides. So when I was thinking about We Belong, and this book, the book's story is that I actually didn't think that I had a book in me, because I'm a poet, and in Tagalog, that's there's a joke about that, because poet sounds like poet means bum.
Okay, you know what? Can everybody hear me? Because I can talk real loud. Okay, we'll just do that. It's gonna be organic right now, guys. So, when I was thinking about this book at first, it started out with just one poem. I wrote this one poem actually basically as a therapy session for myself, that I had something to say and I had to leave it on the page. That's the thing that I always think about, like when I am crafting my stories. What do I want to say? Well, if we are going to go back to the axiom of write what you know, what do I know that nobody else knows, right? You can always, when you look at the breadth of literature, and when I say literature, I don't just mean books. I don't just mean newspapers. It's all media, okay? Because honestly, in this day and age, I sounded like an 80-year-old right then. But in this day and age, right, our media is all the things we consume. Now, back in the day, and I should say that this history may not always rhyme, or history may not always repeat itself, but it always rhymes. And back in the day, there was book banning and media literacy, media control, right? And when I say back in the day, I meant like last Tuesday. Because history rhymes, right? So when you're consuming your media, think about, what do I know that nobody else knows? You might be looking at stuff out there and going, oh man, somebody already said that. That's Avatar: The Last Airbender. Ugh. Okay, wait, no, somebody already said that. That's Beastars. Okay, I'm not gonna say that. Well then, what do you know, right? So ask yourself these questions. Who else? What if, or what else? Why or why not? When, where, and that's the same. I feel like when and where are just two, it's the space-time continuum. So those two are, to me, incredibly linked, right, as ideas. And then how, like how you doing? And I'll explain that in a future slide. Oh, no it doesn't. See, okay. Yeah. We're just gonna go ahead and oh. All right. So who else? So these are examples of 3 books. Oh, and look, coincidentally, my book is up there. So who has not had a chance to speak? Okay. So there are no new stories. Let's start with that.
There are no new stories. There are only new ways to tell them, okay? Sometimes, I have two teenage daughters. One's gonna be 18 this month. Oh my God, in 2 weeks. And then one of them is 16. And these children, bless their little hearts, sometimes think they invented something. And they go, oh, mama, you know what happened? I did this thing. I'm like, girl, I did that when I was 13 anyway. You didn't invent that. Guess what? I didn't invent that either. Somebody else invented that. And these books particularly, I picked Circe and Hecate, the witch, because these are the most recent books that I've read that were telling the story that we all know very familiarly. We know them well. We know these stories really well, right? The story of Odysseus, the story of the Odyssey. But who hasn't spoken yet? Circe. I wonder what she thinks about that. I wonder what Helen of Troy thinks about that, right? Where she was like, hey, dudes, listen, me and Paris just wanted to hook up, but how come this whole war, you're making me the cause for this whole war? How did she feel about that? How did Circe feel about this raggedy sailor, Odysseus, washing up on her shores and all of a sudden expecting to have lechon? Oh, you want lechon? Guess what I'm going to give you? Your own men, because they're all pigs. So that's what happened with Circe. With Hecate the witch, okay, naming it and claiming it. That's another thing that we'll talk about today. And somebody called her a witch. You know who else is a witch? Women who just knew stuff that other people didn't know. So for example, I call myself a witch, but I call myself a witch in the manner of babaylan, who are spiritual healers in the Philippines, okay? I just know what certain herbs do. I know what certain, because I cook really well, trust. Like, if your family, Elliot, I'm telling you this right now, if your family, you'll be fed well. The house might be dirty, but everybody's gonna eat really, really well. So it's just women who knew things that people didn't know. Same thing with the Odyssey. Cassandra, who didn't listen to her? What did she have to say, right? All we know about her is, oh, she did some premonitions that nobody listened to, and then they all died. So just mark that down in your notes. When people don't listen to women, they die. So I took, when I was crafting We Belong, who else has not had a chance to speak? Well, the creation myth of the celestial siblings. Nobody has ever heard about my Ari's story. The only thing that I learned when I was a kid about the creation story of the siblings was that Arao, who used to be Apolake, took out his sister's eye. And that's why he is the sun. S-U-N or S-O-N? Porque no los dos? Both of those things, okay? The sun is the one who inherited the most, quote-unquote, important job in the celestial hierarchy, which is to shine on the world in the daytime and to make crops grow and all of that. Well, but what was my Ari's story, right? Because, and this is the part where we start talking about how to make the personal things in your art feel universal. I'm the middle child, and my older brother, bless his little heart, I am way fiercer than that guy. Like, I could take him in a fight, and pretty easily, actually. I mean, don't tell him that, but, because he'll probably come up with something to try to defeat me, but he won't succeed, because I fight dirty. And you know what? We've had to fight dirty. Women like me have had to fight dirty. My Ari chose not to fight dirty. She just was like, you know what? Actually, you took out my eye, so now I can't fight dirty. I gotta fight with one eye. But she found her place. Okay, so I wanted to tell the story of who else did not get to speak in that myth? So when you're crafting your stories, think about the familiar stories that you specifically, very specifically relate to. And you might think, oh, it's like a bunch of nerd stuff. And I don't mean stuff. It's a bunch of nerd stuff. Nobody's gonna wanna listen to that. But how do you know? How do you know until you try? All right, so when you think about how do you know until you try, what you need to know is what/what if/what else. What do we not know about this story? Okay? So we already talked about the Odyssey, what do we not know about that story? Well, the women haven't spoken. So that's one place to start. Star Wars. Who here is a Star Wars nerd like me? Yeah! Okay. So let's talk about fandom for a second. Star Wars is one of those IPs, right? Where people go, oh yeah, you like that band? Name 5 of Jar Jar Binks' ska hits. And you're like, what? What? And they're like, no, you're not a real fan because all you do is watch the movies. Pardon. Then yes, I am a fan of the movies. But that means that if I'm a fan of any aspect of that, I'm a real fan. Because who is telling you you're not a real fan? Who is telling you that the only real media that you can consume is the Star Wars books? Or the Star Wars, if you're a movie fan, then what did they do in, frame 85, 67? Like, girl, I don't know. But I do know how this made me feel, right? And so when you're talking about, what do we not know about this story? All the daddy issues that were happening over here, what do we not know about that? Well, what we don't know is how would a caring, nurturing father who understands your power, even though you're just a baby, what can that father do for you? Hence, Mandalorian and Grogu. Now, and I've heard, because I am such a baby Grogu fangirl, I've heard all of that. Oh, but that's just Star Wars for kids. Yeah, and I like it. If you've got a problem with it, meet me after school. We'll talk, we're just gonna talk. So that's what I'm saying to all of you guys today is, if somebody ever says to you, but you're not a real fan because you don't listen to the whatever podcast about Star Wars. Yeah, okay. That's kind of what I've learned how to do. Just go, oh, okay, yeah, you run your little universe, darling. I'm just gonna be over here liking Star Wars the way I like it, okay? But again, what do we know about this story? If you want to make art that is responding to this, because art is a conversation, right? What's up, AO3? Those stories are all about, what do we not know about this story, this IP, this fandom, that I want to tell because it's from my perspective. That is also art. Art is a conversation, not a lecture. Art is always political. I went shopping with my children a couple weeks ago, I think it was, because my child, who's over there, and does not want me to point her out, but I just did. It was her prom, okay? The prom's supposed theme was Great Gatsby. So when we were looking for dresses, I'm like, oh, so you gotta do a flapper thing. She's like, no, because they showed a masquerade on the picture. So the Student Government Association showed a masquerade as for the flyer. I'm like, what does that have to do with Great Gatsby? I need to do flapper dresses and do the thing that, if you name something Great Gatsby, I have an expectation that it's going to be flapper dresses, feathers, all that. Nope, it was the masquerade. And my second child, actually said, and I said, you know what, you should just get a flapper dress, just as a protest. That's what I said to my older child. My younger child said, Mother, not everything is a protest. Yes, it is. Especially if you're going to reference art. If you're going to reference Great Gatsby, your theme better be Great Gatsby. You should, see, you guys didn't read Great Gatsby, did you? Okay, I get it. That's why I was urging her to wear a flapper dress as a protest, to remind the Student Government Association, please know your media. If you're gonna name it Great Gatsby, it better be Great Gatsby, 1920s. But anyway, I'm not bitter. Moving on. Okay, so we're moving on to like the location of when, where. So when, where in the space-time continuum, right? So I don't know if you guys can read this clearly, but it says, whenever I see someone refer to Victorian era blank, for places outside the UK, I'm tempted to start saying stuff, oops, I forgot to blur that, like Han Dynasty era Rome and Soviet era Australia, okay? Because naming it is claiming it. How political is it? Again, it's a political choice to name a thing Great Gatsby and not have read the source material. And therefore be like, I don't know, they partied a lot in the 1920s or whenever Great Gatsby was. Sure, it's a masquerade ball. Except no, it's not. Except, oh my God, no, it's not. Here I am pushing my nerd glasses. So when we talk about location, we want to make sure it's this era, right? So all of these histories happen all at the same time. It's just that the person who named it first gets to claim it, right? Which is, colonialism is a hell of a drug. So whenever people go, oh yeah, well I discovered this land. But did you though? Did you though, Magellan? Because look what it got you. It got you killed in the Philippines. So sure, yeah, you discovered this land, now you just died on it. And you sure did give your blood for this land, champ. Not in the way that you wanted to, but you did. And that's what happens when you don't listen to women. Anyway. So when you're picking your location, or when you're picking your story to tell, right? Again, ask yourself, when and where is this happening? Okay? So there's a very famous painting by Bruegel where in the foreground you see a market scene. People are just going about their business. Way in the left-hand corner, tiny, is a boy falling out of the sky, right? Icarus was a big deal in Greek mythology. From whoever was standing there that he probably fell on. But everyone else that was in that city, nobody gave a crap. Nobody knew who Icarus was because he and his father Daedalus were imprisoned, in the royal palace for years. Nobody knew who that was. It was just, probably if somebody looked up and they heard a splash or something like that, they're like, oh, that boy just fell in the ocean. Oh well, right? So location, it also means it's important where you are standing for your specific point of view of that story, right? So again, the person that Icarus fell on is going to have a very different story than the person who, in the farmer's market, who was like, I don't know about some boy who fell, that was like miles, it's all the way over there, it's by the mountains. So think about that as well when you're developing your story. All right. Another thing you can ask yourself when you're developing your story is, why? Why did this story remain untold? Why are we only now hearing from Circe? Why are we only now hearing from Hecate? Why are we now only hearing from May-ari Juan? Because capitalism ruins everything. Again, colonialism is a hell of a drug. Capitalism is the new colonialism. Think about why English is the universal language of commerce. English is a crappy language. It's made up of all of these different things, different grammar rules, different words, different phrases that we co-opted from all these other places that we that we colonized, right? As the supposed United States of America. And the biggest, most egregious example of that I think the colonizers did to the Philippines is naming our country Philippines. There is no F sound in the national Tagalog language. Everyone who is born in the Philippines and who lives in the Philippines right now, they don't call it Philippines, they call it Philippines. Because there's no F sound, right? I'm like, no, there is an F sound. I'm gonna make an F sound. What the F, Spanish colonizers? There's your F sound. Capitalism ruins everything. That's why. So, you could base your story on why the who has not spoken yet in the what way. I mean, what has not been said by who in the when where of your story, and why not? So all of these are building blocks of why you're telling the particular story that you're telling, yeah? And so just keep in mind, right, that the more obscure your factoid is about who, what, when, where, why, you're telling the story, the more unique it's going to be, right? Yes, Romeo and Juliet has been told and retold millions and billions and trillions of times. There is a very, very good reason why high school teachers assign that as required reading. It's not because it's the greatest love story ever told. It's because it's a cautionary tale. Teenagers, bless your little hearts, who think that y'all invent everything. You have not. You did not, and you will not. Until you invent a new way to say that to this person who you're talking to at the moment, right? Until you invent a new way to get these feelings out there. I'll talk about that in a second, because people will always forget what you said. People will always forget what you did, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. So, oh, whoops, these are out of order. Okay, let's go. I made them out of order. Whoopsie. All right, well, let's talk about this now. So why me and why now? This is actually going to be a better lead into to the hows and whatnot. Okay, so why should your story remain untold? Right? Again, when you're thinking about like, oh, but they already said that, they already did that. Okay, but if not you, then who? If not now, then when? I think that was a famous quote by John F. Kennedy, but I can't be sure, that's why I didn't attribute it, okay? Because as y'all know, Abraham Lincoln said, the internet is the greatest source of inspiration for me. So, you never know who said what, unless you do the research. Okay, so this is also me saying, write what you know, and when you write what you know, it's not just what you know inherently, what you came into the world with. It's whatever nerd stuff. Listen, I am a big consumer of the YouTubes. I'll be like, oh, somebody was nerdy enough to do a big YouTube deep dive, 30 minutes into whatever subject it is that I happen to be researching that day. Put all of that stuff in there. You don't, listen, in warrior culture, you never know when you're going to die. So just give it your all, right? You can, because even if you give it your all, and even if you put in all of the nerd references that you wanted to, there's still gonna be more. Because guess what? You keep living your life. You keep coming up with new things that you're interested in. You keep coming up with new ways to tell this story. Lin-Manuel Miranda has written the same story in every single one of his works. He just changes the costumes, you guys. He changes the beat by like a half a turn, and you're like, oh, this is actually a new song. No, it's not. Because you know what it actually is? It's this song from this particular work. That's just In the Heights song, but sped up. That man, okay, y'all, here's another thing that I can tell you. Steal like an artist, okay? Shine your life like a light in the dark, but when you're shining your light and you go, oh, hold on, there's that cutie in the front row with the big hoops and the pink dress. What's her story? I want to know what her story is. And then you shine your light over there and you're like, okay, what's going on over there? There's somebody taking notes on a laptop. You can tell all of those stories even though you've already put in one work, because there are going to be different aspects of the nerd stuff that you love that you can put into the next one. Again, ask Lin-Manuel Miranda, right? Oh, in that song, he's talking about how it would be like, how it would feel like to be displaced out of your home if you were a Pacific Islander princess. Oh, but except in this one, he's talking about it. It's talking about how it would feel to lose your home if you were Alexander Hamilton. Just tell your story before somebody else does. Because the person who names it first claims it, right? But then if you see that somebody has named and claimed your story as if they knew, like, you don't know me, you don't know my story, no, I'm going to tell it now. It's going to be from my point of view now. Circe said, Madeline Miller gave Circe the opportunity to tell her story, right? So seek those stories in the silences. Who has not yet spoken? Why? And in what era, right? You can say, oh, it's Hecate's story, but it's, downtown Seattle in 2026. I want to hear that story. I want to know what you think Hecate would be doing in downtown Seattle in the year 2026. I want to know that story. Okay. But again, know your audience. Okay, so one of the, when I teach writing workshops, one of the things that I love doing is a writing prompt that is for postcards. Okay, so I found like all these old timey postcards at the thrift shop. And my students have, just the back of the postcard to tell the story on the front of the postcard. But here's the thing, okay? In a conversation, again, art is a conversation, not a lecture. Everything is art to me. Maybe not to you, but everything is art to me. So the art of writing a postcard is, what would you write so that when you come back from your vacation or from wherever you were, what conversation are you going to want to have with this person? And you're not going to write the same postcard to your mom as you would write to your bestie, right? I mean, maybe you might. Actually, when I taught this workshop to my daughter's creative writing class, she goes, oh, but except that I talk to you the same way I talk to my friends. I'm like, okay, well, you're the exception to the rule, but most people still would know their audience and say, okay, my mom would care what stuff I ate because she wants to make sure I ate while I was away in Italy for 5 weeks. But my bestie doesn't care. What he wants to know is, how did you feel when you were standing in front of the Caravaggio that you love, that you've been talking about for months and months, that you're going to go see this Caravaggio? Great, okay, now you've said it, you've sent me a postcard about it, can we stop talking about it? And I'm like, no, because guess what? I have more to say about it. But know your audience, right? Again, know your audience, including yourself. I actually write postcards to myself as it's the cheapest souvenir from anywhere that you go, right? Because it's only the cost of a postcard and only the cost of a stamp. And you've got this thing that arrives after you get home and you're like, all I get is bills from the mail. And then, suddenly, 5 weeks later, or in one case, a postcard that I wrote when I was in Italy in July arrived in November. Yeah. Post Italia, not, they're like, there's colored people time. Italian time is even worse than that. It's worse than that. So I write myself a postcard. I say different things to myself that I would say to my daughters, to my mom. So if you're stuck on how to write your story, write a postcard to yourself. From that time and place, yeah? These are all just ways for us to be remembered. Your story is how you're going to be remembered. We go back to Lin-Manuel Miranda, his source material, and this is one of the things I appreciate about when people name their source material. Okay, so hip hop, how many of y'all are hip hop fans? I hope everybody raises their hand. No. But if you're a hip hop fan, they are very, very cognizant of their source material, okay? That's why there's name drops in a lot of hip hop. There's a lot of like, and there's a lot of also naming yourself in the songs and saying, here's what I do, or here's what I've done, or here's what I did with reference to this person that I was interacting with, okay? When you break it down to those basics, they are the new, like hip hop artists are the new cantadores, cantors. Oh my God, my Spanish is so terrible. They are the singers of our stories, okay? And so the artists, the music artists it's not just hip hop, it's a lot of different artists, right? You just have to, one of my favorite songs is by an Italian singer named Marco Mengoni. It's called Guerriero. My child just rolled her eyes. It's called Guerriero because, and I love that song, partly because it taught me a lot of different new Italian words that I hadn't heard before from my study of Italian. I was like, oh, wait a second, what is that word? And so, to me, art is whatever art is that inspires me to make my own art, or to understand something better, to learn something more about that thing. That to me is a successful piece of art. Even if I hate it, even if I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst song that I've ever heard in my life. Okay, but what can I learn from it, right? I can learn, like, this goes for books a lot more, where I'm like, really? That's the best you can do with this story? Let me show you how it's really done. So you know what? Honestly, the best revenge is making your own art. So if somebody tells you, yeah, you don't know anything about Star Wars. You don't know anything about the political whatevers of Star Wars. Oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna make a Star Wars story that is about the daddy issues, which is the Mandalorian and Grogu. And also because baby Grogu is the cutest thing ever in the world, and nobody can tell me different. Okay, next slide. All right, so how did that make you feel? All right, so like I said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that quote is attributed correctly because Maya Angelou wrote it. Okay, so coming back around to Lin-Manuel Miranda, because that dude, so one of my metrics of success for my writing is I kind of find a nemesis. And I know that word now means enemy. But nemesis, in the classic definition of it, is actually somebody who is your equal. Somebody who, if you were to get into a fight with them, you'd be like, okay, look, blades drawn at dawn, but I will make sure that you can see the whites of my eyes and you and I have a fair fight. It's a warrior's honorable death, right? You don't want to die when you are sitting on the toilet having a peanut butter and banana sandwich like Elvis. You want to die gloriously in battle. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, the battlefield as in like the traditional battlefield. Because guess what? Pat Benatar said, love is a battlefield. There's a lot of battlefields out there, y'all. So, pick how you're going to make that person feel who you are standing in front of, right? Are they going to become an adversary, which is like, or are they a nemesis in the traditional sort of the word where they are challenging you to be better than what you are right now? Lin-Manuel Miranda is kind of my nemesis, okay? Where I've been like, no, I can't believe you said it like that, because I was going to say it like that. Oh, okay, hold on. How am I going to say this differently then, right? So, in this slide right here, so that lady her name is Benedetta Rossi, and she is one of my favorite. When I was in Italy and I was trying to get the rhythm of the language, I watched a lot of Italian TV, like a lot. And I was kind of going back and forth between the cooking shows and MTV Italia. And she was my favorite of all the cooking shows that I read that I consumed, because she would tell stories. So that one that she says, La mia carbonara sbagliata. It's my mistake, or my wrong carbonara. Because she uses, instead of, oh no, I just forgot the thing that you're supposed to use. But she uses pancetta instead of what you're supposed to use, which is like the pork belly, or like a particular cut of pork belly. She uses what we would call more like ham, or more like our traditional bacon, which is the pancetta. And then she does use a little bit of cream. And so that dude right there made a whole, on the corner of her, made a whole video about how everything was wrong about her recipe. Okay, but who died and made you the carbonara expert and the carbonara pope? She can make it however she wants. And the reason why she makes it that way is because she grew up poor. And pancetta was the meat that they could afford. And she always had this memory of her mother making, she always knew that her mother was making carbonara because she could smell the pancetta cooking. Okay, who knows that middle symbol, or that middle picture? Do y'all recognize that? Yeah, from Ratatouille. It's the critic that takes one bite and goes, oh, holy cow, this food makes me feel like I used to feel when I was a little kid, and I'd come home from school and my mother had made this ratatouille, right? So food is also an art. Like I said, I know how to spice my season. I know how to season well, because the melanin in my skin makes it hard for me not to season well. As part of the We Belong sort of book tour, I was able to do a collaboration with this lady, Jan Parker. She's a chef, and she has, she's down in Tacoma, and she does all of these pop-ups, and she's at the farmer's market, and she's trying to get a restaurant started. So Jan Parker, she was on that show where you make, I forgot what the name of the show is, because of course, but you get a basket, and then you have 30 minutes to make something out of all the ingredients in that basket, and it's chopped. Was it chopped? Yes, chopped. That's it. Thank you. So chopped. She was on Chopped, and she was awesome. So I got to make a traditional kare kare, which the recipe is not in this book, but it kind of is, because if y'all have read We Belong, I include a song in there called Bahay Kubo, which talks about all of the different plants that are growing around the nipa hut, right? That's a song that has been taught to children for millennia, probably. We got to know it, of course, because pre-colonial tribes and pre-colonial peoples, we spread our stories through song, because it's a lot easier to remember something if it's kind of sing-songy. Think about the very first time that you learned language, right? What's the first thing that you can still sing to this day is the ABCs, right? I hope everybody here knows their ABCs, right? And so when I used to teach Tagalog back in college, I would teach Bahay Kubo, and then I would teach the Filipino alphabet, the Tagalog alphabet. Because you learn better through songs, right? So, food is an art form, singing is an art form, dance is an art form. Anything that you use to express yourself, that's art, okay? Okay, next slide. All right, so we return to knowing is half the battle. 3 things that I want y'all to remember. Write what you know your audience, including yourself. And knowing is only half the battle. You know, when my kids go, oh, well, that's the thing that I know. I know that already, Mama. Okay, well, if you know, then go do it. If you know your room is gross, then go clean it. If you know it, do it. Like, oh, and people who go, oh, I'm sorry, but that didn't happen. And you know what? What am I going to do with that sorry? It's not going to clean my kitchen. If you're sorry you didn't clean the kitchen before, go clean the kitchen now. So if you feel like, okay, if you know that nobody else has done this story in however you know, after you've done all your research, right? Because it is important also to make sure that you didn't say something that somebody else did. But it's also important to, if you want to repeat what somebody else did, do that, but know and cite your sources, right? Because otherwise, you just make stuff up. And how do I know that you are media literate enough to know that Beastars is not just a cartoon about furries? It's super not. It's deeper than that, okay? And I will die on that hill. Okay, now the questions you want to ask: who or who else, right? Who has not spoken yet? In the silence. What? What if this was the actual story? What if this was the story from the point of view of the person that Icarus fell on? What else can I say about this, right? If somebody else already said what you were going to say, what else could you say about it, all right? Why or why not? Why haven't we heard from this person? Well, it's because they're a woman. It's because they're gay. It's because they're black. It's because they're other, right? Why did we name it the Middle East? It's the Middle East from where? From London. Oh, I don't want to call it that. Why are we called as a monolith Asians when there's like all kinds of different, like just because all of the Philippines can fit into California doesn't mean that we're all Californians. Same thing with Californians. Northern Californians are so different from Southern Californians. Everybody thinks, oh, San Francisco is my view of California. And so San Francisco, because it's hot in LA, it's going to be hot in San Francisco. No, it won't. As Mark Twain famously said, the coldest winter he ever spent was summer in San Francisco. It's true. Like, you drive across the Golden Gate Bridge and you see all of these, you know they're tourists because they're wearing tank tops and shorts in July, which would fly in any other place except for going across the Golden Gate Bridge in July in San Francisco. That's why all of the Pier 39 sweatshirt shops make so much bank, is because all of a sudden, all these cold tourists are like, oh, I need a sweatshirt and I need pants and stuff. So, considering all of those things and the when, where, right? Again, San Francisco in July, not the same as San Diego in July. And then, how you doing? How are you feeling about this? How do you want other people to feel about this? When you first write a story, when you first make a piece of art, do you feel like you did a good job? Because if you feel like you did a good job, who cares what anybody else thinks, right? Who cares if you're Jackson Pollock and you decide to drip cigarette ashes on the thing and you think, oh yeah, that's art. I'll call it Man's Inhumanity to Man or something. No, it's still a trash piece of art. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. I'm only one person. If you love you some Jackson Pollock, bless. I do not. But who cares? Because it's only how you doing. Okay. Next slide. All right. So who knew that your own personal mythos, you knew it? Okay, so who are these people? Depeche Mode, woo! She got the quiz answer right, yes, they got the answer right. So thank you so much for listening intently, and now I think we're going to have a bit of questions and conversation.
Thank
I wonder if this is
you.
working. Oh, yay, it's working.
Yay. Thank you so much. That was amazing. And I know that a lot of, yeah, let's give Cookie a hand. Thank you. I know that as I was listening, I heard so many connections to the Once Upon a Time fairy tale retelling class. And so we're going to have a conversation that is based on your questions. I also want to remind everyone that we would not get this generous funding without a record of attendance. So please, please do make sure that you have signed into this event, because we want to show people that these events are attended and worth continuing to fund. So Dawn from Anapisi is going around making sure everyone gets signed in, so just make sure that you do that, please. Thank you. So, wow, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. So I'm going to start, these are questions that students have brainstormed.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
And I am actually going to start with one, and we have the questions by discipline,
Oh, okay.
because our class is made up of 4 disciplines. And so I want to explain what the class is a little bit,
Yeah.
and then start with an overall question. So this is an interdisciplinary class, which means that we have 4 courses in one. So it has 2 instructors, me and Catherine Cabral up here. And the 4 courses we teach are intercultural communications, young adult literature, creative writing, and English composition.
Nice.
So I know that this is a middle grade book, but
Yes.
it reads very much like young adult in many ways.
Yes, and so that was something that I wanted to talk about too, but kind of didn't fit in with the overall talk, which is that categorizations are pretty they're pretty arbitrary, right? Like, this is marketed as a middle grade book, but I've heard of at least 4 different adult book clubs that have taken this on as their book club reading.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those categorizations are for marketing, but don't
Yeah.
really reflect the content.
They don't really
of
reflect the
book.
content, yeah, because, and I think it's a sad sort of thing also that you would say, oh, this is a middle grade, like it's only, like, 8 to 12-year-olds are the ones who are gonna understand this the best.
Right.
Well, okay, but I'm gonna talk to them like they're much more literate than I am.
Right.
Because a lot of kids that I've met, actually, like my students, I'm like, ooh, I want to be you when I grow up. Like, how did you come up with that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Great. I love that we dove into one of the questions already.
oh, really? Okay.
So, so this is our class. It's these 4 separate disciplines, but where all of these disciplines are combined under one theme.
Gotcha.
So we take disciplinary lenses or approaches to this common theme.
Yeah.
And so our class is Once Upon a Time Again, fairy tale retellings.
Yeah.
So the first question is an interdisciplinary question. How much inspiration was taken from your own story in We Belong? And what choices did you make in the retelling of both your personal story and the story of Mayari?
Okay. So this definitely touches on your own personal mythos, right? Like, virtually all of the immigration family story is actually taken from my own life. Okay, like the only things like especially the John Taylor story, that's definitely true. When the Reflex video came on and John Taylor got on the screen and I went, oh, white boys are pretty. Okay, America might be okay. It might be okay here. I only changed certain details, like names, of course, I changed, but certain details that, here's another thing, writers, you need to have plausible deniability, right? So if you only, again, Lin-Manuel will write the same thing, oh, I'm just gonna change this one chord progression though, since it's not that song, it's this song, tee-hee. So I just took my story for the immigration story and then changed just a little bit, right, to make it so that there's plausible deniability. And you can do the same thing with Mythos, meaning I likened my story to the story of the Celestial Siblings and my Adi because we hadn't heard from her before, right? And she's a second child. I made her a middle child because I'm a middle child. There's actually other myths that talk about my Adi as the eldest of 3 sisters. But, because myth is changeable in that way, again, whoever is telling the myth is telling it from their point of view. So Icarus is a big guy in Greek mythology, but the people in those farmers market stalls don't know who he is at all, right? So I did that where I just looked for the slivers of daylight between, well, this part of the story hasn't been told yet. This part of the story can be changed a little bit so that it dovetails with my narrative. That's why it's so important for you to know your sources well, and so that you're able to steal like an artist. Not steal and make it pastiche and make it, like you look at it and you go, wait, hold on, Miley Cyrus, did you just entirely lift Bruno Mars's song and make it your song? I don't think that's how this works, girl. So make it so that there's plausible deniability, but it's still your own voice.
That's great. So much of what you said about looking for the daylight and what has not been spoken yet reminds me so much of what Catherine talks about all the time.
Right on, see?
So this question is from Intercultural Communication. And the question is, what was the cultural significance for you in including the Tagalog language?
Oh, okay. So I definitely, those of you who speak another language besides English, y'all know there are so many words that I'm like, I don't know the English word for it because it'll take me like 5 different words actually to say this one thing. Like one of my favorite words actually made it into this book, kisap mata. That means the twinkling of an eye. But it's 1 word in Tagalog and 4 words in English. So the twinkling of an eye, kisap mata. I'm like, I don't know how to say it, but that's also why I watched a lot of Italian TV when I was in Italy to get the rhythm of language. Because when I was teaching Tagalog in college, the person who wrote the textbook was a white dude who was married to a Filipina. I know. And so he and I had a lot of clashes as to what's the proper grammar for this. I'm like, I know my audience. All of my students are trying to learn Tagalog because they want to talk to their grandparents. Not because they're going to write a textbook, in 20 years or whatever. And these are all actual Filipino kids. Like, they want to learn the language, right? And so I wanted to include specifically the language in this book because I wrote this book for my children. This is me. This is my own personal mythos right here. If I died today, this is the thing that I would say, like, hey, this is actually my story, right? And so to be able to say that I wrote it before to be able to say specifically that I wrote my story, the Tagalog language had to be in there because I speak Tagalog. And there are definitely words that I can't say or there are definitely words that are better said in Tagalog than in English.
I love that. Thank you so much. The second question under intercultural communication is, do you feel like belonging in two worlds is advantageous in terms of the capacity for having empathy for others?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And so there's a lot of, I talked a little bit about this before, there's a lot of gatekeeping, right? Not just in fandoms, not just in media, a lot of gatekeeping about, well, what makes you a real Filipino? And I wrote this for my two kids who, they have a white dad and they have me as a mom. And I actually once met a Filipina who, when I took my older daughter, she was about a year old, took my older daughter to the park, and this Filipina comes up to me and she goes, oh, your baby's so pretty. Oh, well, thank you. How long have you been her nanny? And I'm like, oh, what? Just because I'm brown and she's lighter than me? And I went, I've been her mother ever since I delivered her after 41 hours of labor. I've been her mother since a year ago. And she goes, okay. Well, anyway, she's so pretty. Her dad must be white. And I went, well, yeah, but all the pretty came from me. Have you met me? Come on. So it's very much like this, I'm sorry, what was the question?
I don't care, keep going.
Oh, no, but the story is relevant in that, so belonging in two worlds, right, helps you to understand how people are perceiving you.
Yeah.
Because look, I belong in the Filipino world, right? I belong in the American world or in the white world. But there have been certain sacrifices that I've had to make in order to belong to both of those worlds. Because I don't actually fully belong in both. This is the third culture kid dilemma, is because I have some of the characteristics of this world and some of the characteristics in this world, I don't really fully belong in either one of them. So now there's this kind of like, the bit of the Venn diagram like circles where I actually do fit. It's just that now I have to make my own home within this diagram, within that center diagram of the diagram, right? And so belonging doesn't necessarily mean like you have fulfilled all the check marks that whoever was gatekeeping this for you. Oh yeah, I checked off. I'm a Star Wars fan because I've watched all the movies, I've read all the books, I own, the Millennium Death Star Legos. Cool story, bro. But what actually did you learn from it? How did whatever you just did enhance your story? That's what I want to know. If you're just collecting, then you're just knowing. Knowing is only half the battle. So if you can't tell me anything new except for what this is that you have consumed, maybe come back to me later.
I love that your response talked about resisting the gatekeeping to belonging.
Yes, absolutely.
And that your talk was about that as well. And that your book is so beautiful because not only did you title it We Belong, but it feels like you have created that belonging for so many readers who can identify.
Yeah, that's actually one of the best things. I mean, when you came up to me it was a happy hour event thing, and when she came up to me and said all that, I was just like, oh my gosh. And I wasn't even thinking about the class. I was thinking about her, that a fellow author would say to me, oh, your book made me feel seen, made my students feel seen, made me feel like there was that piece of me that was heard and appreciated, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I was like, all right, cool. See, the sales numbers, and to be to be honest, the sales numbers for this book have not been great. So I'm glad that it has now become, okay, sorry. I don't really care about sales numbers. This is what I care about. The fact that everybody in this room has now, consumed this story and is now thinking about the themes that brought up. That's what's important to me. I know that sounds like very ABC after school special. Hey, your auntie heard what you said. Yes, it can be that, but also genuinely it can be that. I am so happy that y'all connected with the book so well.
Thank you. I have 2 per discipline, so I'm just going to go for the rest of them, just one
Okay,
question per
yeah,
discipline. So for the young adult literature, you've already answered the second question, which
Okay.
is, did you have your children in mind while writing? So I'll skip that one.
Yeah.
And go to, did you have any pushback in your choice of including themes of domestic violence in your story as a book targeted for young audiences? Why was that important for you to represent?
Okay, so thankfully I did not have any pushback on that. The biggest pushback I had actually was whether or not we would be able to include, we're immigrants, we get the job done. I was like, come on, I want to fight this dude after school. I gotta have his quote in there. So that was the only one that my editor really pushed back on. But the themes of domestic violence and the themes of, here's the thing is that bad things happen all the time to kids, right? And if this was going to be a middle grade book, I wanted them to understand that, hey, your auntie, your Tita Cookie also went through that. So I understand where you're coming from. I understand like why you would feel unsafe in this world that makes you feel like you don't belong, right? Well, it's because somebody told you you were bad. Do you want to make them right, or do you want to make them wrong, or you want to prove them wrong, right? So it's not, yeah. So I was really happy that they didn't push back on that because, and I think probably the best way to tell that story was in poetry, right? To make it more palatable. Incidentally, that poem was the starter of We Belong. That poem that was so difficult, right? That was the first poem that I wrote for this book. And then I built it around that of like, all right, well, why would this immigrant kid feel like they don't belong in the United States? Well, because they don't belong to their mother, obviously, because why would a mother do that to her own child? So they don't belong to their motherland because now they're American, but they also don't belong to this new land because the rules have changed for some reason, right? Somebody else made the rules of belonging. So when that happens, you have to figure out where you belong. And if you don't if you don't belong here and if you don't belong there, that's okay. Pick that middle ground, right? And say, this is where I belong because I said so. Name it and claim it, right?
I love that. You just answered 2 of our questions.
Yay, look at me. So 5 gold stars.
I know. One of the questions was under creative writing, and it was about why you made the decision to tell this novel in
Right,
verse,
yeah.
which you answered
Yes.
beautifully. The other question was under composition, which was which asked about having both Filipino and U.S. culture within
Yeah.
you impacted your writing. Such a great question. So I have to come back to that one.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask a question under creative writing about, actually, I'm going to check the time and make some decisions. Okay, I'm going to ask really quickly
Okay.
this question about revision.
Yeah.
Were there any ideas you were attached to and had to remove or condense audience, what was the effect of this or other editing processes? So if you want to talk about.
There weren't any ideas that I had to condense necessarily. I just had to pick, like I was saying before, put everything in there. Like, if you're like, oh, you know what, but I can save this for the second book. Sometimes you don't get a second book, like I did. I did not get a second book. And so you have to put in the aspect of this thing that is gonna matter. So for example, I made a lot of pop culture references in this book that people actually didn't get. So there's a reference to the Muppets song, Rainbow Connection, in there. And you probably don't know. I mean, if you do, or if you're gonna go home tonight and be like, oh my God, let me scour through the whole thing again and figure out where she put the Rainbow Connection. Or I can tell you if you ask nicely when y'all come up and talk to me. But again, like the only thing that I had to really do was pick and choose pick which POV it was that I was gonna look at, and tell it only from that specific point of view, instead of, I'm going to cut off like this entire thing that I don't wanna put in. It was just like, no, let me just put in this one aspect of it, because that's the most relevant. So you always have to come back to the crux of the story. What is the one thing that you want to say, right? And make sure everything that you say around it serves your central purpose. It's in the title, We Belong. How am I saying that story? How am I talking about that story? If my Sound of Music reference doesn't go back to that story, it's gotta be taken out.
Thank you so much for that, because we're being very strict and mean
Yeah.
to our students about word count for the story.
Sometimes.
So, right, so we're doing revision on Thursday, so that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a question about mentor text, because
Oh,
you
okay.
talked about stealing like an artist,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
so relevant to how, and this is under composition, English 102.
Okay.
So we talk about mentor texts, and in their composition essay, their capstone analysis essay, they will be talking about their mentor texts and what they have used as inspiration for their fairy tale retelling.
Nice.
So the question is, what other literature served as your inspiration for We Belong?
Wow, okay, great question. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, literature, to me, literature is more like media, okay? So everything from The Rainbow Connection, to Sound of Music, to Hamilton, to, there's a book called Farewell to Manzanar, there's, the Greek myths, obviously, but also the Tagalog myths, which I was like, because when I wanted to tell this story, I was looking for which myth could I steal? And there's enough daylight between, Mayadi is the daughter of Bacala, but we don't know who her mother is, so I can say her mother is Filipina, so that I can do the thing of they have a foot in both worlds. They're both heavenly children and they are earthly children, just like I'm both Filipina and American, right? So it even, like I said, it came down to even like Sound of Music, and I actually did an interview about some of the other inspirations, like who knows the story of Anastasia, the Romanovs, right? So there's a rumor that she survived the revolution, and that she was, and there were all of the Anastasias back in the day of like, this might be her, and that movie, The Anastasia, right, served as one of my, I actually have a Spotify playlist that has a lot of the songs that inspired me to write this book. So what I'm gonna do is I know y'all are like, oh my God, really? I have a bibliography that I forgot to put in the slides that I'm going to send to you,
Yes.
and send you that Spotify playlist link. Because one of my poetry students, he read the book and played the playlist as he was reading it and went, did she just? I'm like, yes, I did. I did just steal that. You are correct, sir. Good job. You're very smart. Now shut up.
That's amazing because someone is, I believe, doing an Anastasia retelling. Who is it?
Yes. So this the whole story of them finding out, wait, what do you mean we are celestial royalty? What do you mean our dad is the creator God? What? No, our dad is that dude. Ew. What? Yeah. And so you never know what somebody's story is.
That's so cool. Okay, we have 4 minutes, so I'm going to ask a really quick question. This is under composition, English 102. And I'm going to ask the second part of this question. How does having, and you've answered part of it, but I just wanted
very cool.
to
Yeah.
see. How does having both Filipino and U.S. culture within you impact your writing in terms of navigating the ambiguous space between them?
Okay, so this is the part where this is why I say that making your art personal is going to make it universal, right? Is because you don't belong, or because I don't fully belong in either camp. I don't fully belong in the straight camp either, but I'm not quite like, I'm not, when people say, oh, but you're gay. Well, no, I wouldn't call myself that. I'm queer for sure, but I'm not. So I'm kind of in that, okay, y'all who play video games, you know the sliders? Like my slider goes more towards queer than straight. My slider goes more towards American than Filipino, but it's still in the middle, right? It's still kind of right there. It's just how much Filipino, how much American, how much, that's why I also talk about cooking, is like, I don't cook with a recipe. Look, my Italian's coming out. I don't cook with a recipe. I kind of taste as I go along, and I'm like, I feel like it needs more chili crisp. I feel like it needs more of this. And so it's frustrating to my daughter when she's like, no, but how? What's the ratio of thing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'll taste it as I go. And then she'll be like, yeah, but see, now your spit is in it. I'm like, no, it's not. I take a spoonful and then I taste that. Come on, give me some credit.
I love that we're ending on your spit is not in the food.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Put your
Yeah,
spit in the food.
one more round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you are in the Once Upon a Time retelling class, we're going to take 30 minutes before we return to the classroom to wrap up. There is food provided by Anna Peasy. Please do make sure that you have signed in. If you brought, I hope you all saw my announcement that said, please bring your book. If you brought your book, Cookie Hiponia, oh no, I'm seeing some sad faces, has agreed to do some signings and maybe a sheet of paper that you can cut out and paste into your book as well. Okay. All right, so.
Thank
you.
Oh wait, I should end the video.